Welcome to another video review with me, Ian Williams, where today I'm taking a look at the new iPhone 3GS. Now, love it or hate it, iPhone has taken the mobile market by storm and caused some pretty fundamental shifts in the entire industry. What we have here is the third iteration of the iPhone, and as you can see, the 3GS is pretty much identical to its predecessor in appearance. But there have been quite a few upgrades under the hood. Most obvious of which is that the storage capacity has been increased to a maximum of 32 gigabytes, and the camera has been bumped up from 2 to 3 megapixels. No flash yet, but do have autofocus. Under the hood, there's a faster processor, higher data speeds, and a magnetometer as well. Now, let's have a quick look at the device itself. Now, as I mentioned, there's a magnetometer which allows the iPhone to act as something of a compass. But unless you're an avid hiker, this may not seem like such a useful addition. It's when you combine these with other features like GPS that you start to see its true value. So for instance, if you're navigating, this becomes easier as you now not only know where you are, but also what direction you're facing in. If you add into this the camera and the accelerometer into the mix, you start being able to make use of what are called augmented reality applications, where you can take a view from the camera or the map and overlay it with information like nearby tube stations, landmarks, and other points of interest. Now, it has to be said, the slightly faster processor and the higher data speeds, they do show. Everything seems to just run that little bit smoother and pages load that little bit faster. Even things like Google Earth, a traditionally very slow and kludgy application, runs quite a bit quicker on the 3GS. According to Apple, the 3GS also has a smudge-resistant screen, but to be honest, it doesn't seem to make much difference. Even after a few minutes of using it, the screen is covered in smudges, and you're going to be wiping it on your sleeve every 5 minutes. Now, of course, the 3GS runs version 3 of the operating system, which brings in a raft of new features, many of which will be available to the original iPhone and iPhone 3G owners as well, and includes such novel concepts as universal search, we can see here, which lets you search the entire iPhone, be it songs, email, contacts, whatever you like, without having to go into individual applications. And there's also video recording, voice recording, and MMS. There's also voice control, so you hold down the key button for a minute and dial Ian Williams, and it'll obey any voice commands you give it. Now, I'm not sure anybody really uses voice control, but it's there if you want it. And it must be said, though, in true Apple fashion, the voice control isn't trainable at all. Instead, you have to speak in a way it understands and learn its keywords. But once you get the hang of it, as you can see, it's actually pretty accurate. Now, of course, some people will argue that Apple's not doing anything new with these improvements, and that it's just catching up with what most of today's smartphones can already do. But that said, regardless, these new features do make it an even greater threat in the enterprise market, as the iPhone has enough functionality to be more or less a workable business device. There are two other major features that really help the iPhone take on the likes of BlackBerry, namely the ability to use it almost any application and a keyboard in landscape mode, and which makes it just a lot easier if you have two hands spare to type, and the addition of copy and paste. Now, although the copy and paste has been much rejoiced by the iPhone community, I just found it a very kludgy way of doing things. You have to select find the text you want to select, hold down and release, then choose the select option, then move the little markers to choose what text you want to manipulate, then select the cut, copy, or paste option, and then repeat again when you want to paste it, so hold it down and select the paste option where you want to go. So this just all in all seems like a very, very slow and laborious way of doing things compared to the way most other mobile operating systems handle the same problem. Now, Apple's managed to improve the battery life as well, or so it says, but I have to say that even with only normal usage, I've only been battling to make it through a day on a single charge. And there are reports of people out there saying they can barely make it through a business day, just 8 or 10 hours without needing to top up the battery. Apple's also introduced iPhone tethering, which allows you to connect the phone to a PC or Mac and use it as a 3G modem. And as useful as this sounds, here in the UK, this feature has really been crippled by the mobile operator with the introduction of a tethering charge. Despite the fact that the iPhone has unlimited data on the phone itself, if you want to tether your iPhone, you have to buy a bolt-on for £15 a month. And that only gives you 3 gigabytes of data. It's an extra £30 a month if you want up to 10 gigabytes. Now, in this case, most people would simply be better off buying a separate 3G dongle. It may be an extra thing to worry about, an extra SIM to carry around, but it's going to be a lot cheaper in the long run. Speaking of hefty prices, if you thought previous iPhones were a bit pricey, the 3GS is going to knock your socks off. On an 18-month contract for £30 or £35 a month, yeah, you're going to have to fork out £185 for the 16 gigabyte versions up front and a whopping £280 for the 32 gigabyte version. Even if you opt for a full 2-year £35 a month contract, you still have to pay £175 for the 32 gigabyte iPhone. And given that Apple has so far released a new iPhone every year or so, a 2-year contract just doesn't seem like a good idea. So the iPhone 3GS is faster and packed with new features, but is it really worth the upgrade? Given that most of these new features are available on the new iPhone, on previous iPhones through the OS 3 upgrade, it's probably not worth it if you have a 3G and are only a few months into your contract. But if you're a fan of Apple and your contract is up for renewal, it may be worth counting up your pennies. But before you go handing over your life savings, I would definitely recommend checking out a couple of the new smartphones that are about to or have just hit the market. There's the HTC Touch Pro 2 if you like having a physical keyboard and you like Windows Mobile. Or there's the N97 if you're a Symbian fan. There's also the upcoming HTC Hero, which runs Android, and even the Palm Pre, which is already out in the States and due out in the UK later this year. I hope you've enjoyed my take on the iPhone 3GS and will join me soon for another video review from the V3 Studio.